foundation in its being, is, in this sense, as they said, literally, an anarchical mystery. Arche in Greek means beginning, foundation. And God's economy has no foundation, has no beginning. It's completely independent from God's being. And this becomes perfectly clear as we try to understand the meaning in this perspective of the great controversy on Arianism that so deeply divided the Church between the 4th and the 6th century. Why was the fight so merciless and long-lasting? It involved also the profane power. The emperor took position. What was on stake in this debate? I will not enter all the theological details. What was on stake, the main point in the debate, was the anarchical character, that is to say, without arche, without foundation, without beginning, of the Son, the Christ. Arius, which became after an heretical, maintained that Christ, the Son, which was the Logos, the Word and the action of God, was grounded in the Father, was not anarchical like the Father, but he had its beginning and foundation in the Father. The prevailing doctrine, which became then the orthodoxy, stated firmly that the Son, the Christ, is anarchos, without beginning or foundation, exactly like the Father. So the Christ is completely independent, is a divine figure without beginning and without foundation in the Father. This thesis of the anarchy of the Christ is perhaps the most ominous inheritance that Christian theology bequeaths to modernity. Why? Because it implies that language and action, as the divine action, language and divine action, have no foundation in being, are in this sense anarchical. This means that classical ontology, Greek ontology, with its idea of a substantial link between being and logos, being and language, also between being and praxis, action, is ruined forever. Any attempt since that moment to found language on being is doomed to fail. You know, according to Aristotle, for instance, God moved the world, the heavens, but he didn't move because he wanted this. Its being coincided with his action. So the Christian fathers completely reversed this point of view. God's action has nothing to do with God's being. And this is the inheritance which we had to cope with, because then if action has no foundation in being, politics, ethics, etc., become extremely problematic. Moreover, it's precisely because being and action are both anarchical, in this sense. Precisely for that reason, something such as a government. You know that government comes from the Greek kybernetes, which means the pilot, the helmsman in a ship. So it has to do to guide the ship. So precisely because being and action are both anarchical, a government becomes possible and even necessary. It is the groundless or anarchical character of a human and divine action that makes it possible to govern this action. If action and being were the same, you couldn't govern the action. But this means, as a consequence, that economy, or economia, that is to say governance, is essentially anarchical. that there is a secret solidarity between government and anarchy. There is a government only because the elements that constitute this government are anarchical, groundless. When one of the main characters in Pasolini's film Salò says that the only real anarchy is the anarchy of power, and when Benjamin writes that there is nothing so anarchical as the bourgeois order, their statement are to be taken extremely seriously. So there is a solidarity between governance and anarchy. So this was the first point. I'm trying to analyze the structure of an act of governance. This is the first point. So the second point, I will call it, there is a long development of this on my investigation, the kingdom and the government. So that is to say, the double structure of government. So one of the points who was to have a great impact on Western culture is the strategic conjunction of this doctrine of the divine economy with the theory of providence. That is to say, of the divine government of the world. Providence just means the divine government of the world. The coming together of these two paradigms, which have different origins, or providence also come from Greek Stoic philosophy, etc., is already accomplished in Clement of Alexandria at the end of the 2nd century. And through to the end of the 17th century, almost without interruption, it has given rise to an incredible amount of philosophical and theological literature. Perhaps providence is the subject on which philosophers and theologians have more written. Providence means, as you probably know, that God is constantly busy in governing the world. And if he would stop for a single instant, then the world would collapse. This is the theological basis of providence. But how does providence, how does this divine government of the world function? So since the beginning, this is a very, very important point, we see that providence is conceived as a double or bipolar machine. That's a constant. So since the beginning of the theory, we have a double structure. God does not govern the world directly in all details, up to the last small animal or insect or sparrow, as the Gospel says. But God governs the world through universal principles. Theologians distinguish, therefore, between a general providence, which establishes the universal law and universal and transcendent laws and the first causes, and they call this ordinatio, ordering, the order. And then a special providence that is entrusted to the angels or to the mechanism of immanent and secondary causes. And they will call this execution, executio. So the machine of divine government is a general law and execution. Probably you have recognized the democratic model. So no matter how theologians conceive of the relation between these two poles, in any case, the bipolar structure must be present. If they are completely divided, no government is possible. There will be on one side an all-might sovereign who is effectively impotent, and on the other, the chaotic mass of the particular acts of intervention and governance. A government is possible